From Sergio Leone to Peter Bogdanovich, some legendary directors were offered The Godfather before Francis Ford Coppola agreed to do it. Coppola was initially hesitant to direct The Godfather, because he found Mario Puzo's source novel to be a shallow and dimensionless portrayal of the mafia. However, upon revisiting the book, he found more thematic depth in the story and figured out what his approach would be. Rather than making The Godfather as a typical gangster movie, Coppola made it as a family drama about the tensions and conflicts within a tight-knit Italian-American family, which he knew all about. This is what made The Godfather so special, and why The Godfather still holds up today. Coppola's approach transcended the crime genre and presented a universal family dynamic that everybody could relate to, whether they were affiliated with the mob or not. But Coppola almost didn't direct the film. He was far from Paramount's first choice. At least 8 other filmmakers were offered the job before Coppola, but they all turned it down, either due to scheduling conflicts or objections to the violent material. The Godfather would have turned out very differently if one of these directors had done it. 8. Sergio Leone. Iconic shot from Once Upon a Time in America of characters walking with the Manhattan Bridge behind them. Paramount's first choice to direct The Godfather was Sergio Leone, via the New York Times. The studio executives were convinced that their last mafia movie, The Brotherhood, had failed at the box office because none of its cast and crew were of Italian descent, so they were determined to get an Italian filmmaker to helm The Godfather. Leone is best known as a pioneer of the spaghetti western genre, having helmed such trailblazing classics as A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, The Good, The Bad, and the Ugly, and Once Upon a Time in the West. However, Leone turned down the offer, because he was working on his own gangster movie, Once Upon a Time in America. Leone wanted to deconstruct the Hollywood gangster myth in a way he wouldn't have been able to do with The Godfather. Unfortunately, Leone's passion project languished in development hell for over a decade, and Once Upon a Time in America didn't see the light of day until 1984, a full 12 years after The Godfather arrived in theaters. Leone's take on The Godfather probably would have been very extravagant and operatic, and even bloodier than Coppola's version. 7. Peter Bogdanovich. Actress Tatum O'Neal as Addie Loggins in Paper Moon. After Leone turned down the job, Paramount offered The Godfather to Peter Bogdanovich, but Bogdanovich had even less interest than Leone, via The Guardian. Bogdanovich said that he was so flippant in rejecting the project that he didn't even realize it was The Godfather until a decade later. As soon as he heard that it was about the mafia, he turned it down, because he had no proclivity to make a gangster movie. Bogdanovich said that if he did take the job, his Godfather would have been a whole different picture. He would have cast Edward G. Robinson as Don Vito Corleone. At the time, Bogdanovich had burst onto the scene with his low-budget debut feature Targets and was getting a lot of buzz for his sophomore directorial effort, The Last Picture Show, which would ultimately earn him Oscar nominations for Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay. Instead of making The Godfather, Bogdanovich directed the old-school screwball comedy What's Up, Doc? And the heartfelt father-daughter road movie Paper Moon, now considered to be 2 of the finest films of the 1970s. It was much better to get that double whammy than a half-hearted version of The Godfather for a paycheck. 6. Peter Yates. Steve McQueen in a car chase in Bullitt. After Leone and Bogdanovich turned it down, The Godfather was offered to at least 8 more filmmakers, via CBS News, before Coppola finally agreed to direct it. One of the directors who turned it down was Peter Yates, best known for directing the Steve McQueen police thriller Bullitt. Yates also helmed the heist film Robbery, which marked his big break, and led to him getting the job directing Bullitt, the coming-of-age dramedy Breaking Away, and the science fantasy cult classic Krull. Yates likely would have directed The Godfather more as a straightforward action movie. His approach to scenes like Michael killing McCluskey in the restaurant and Sonny getting gunned down at the toll booth would have been a sensationalist spectacle like Bullitt's iconic car chase. Coppola's grounded, realistic approach to the violence was much more unnerving and impactful. 5. Otto Preminger. A portrait looms over a man from Laura. Otto Preminger similarly turned down The Godfather after being offered the job. Preminger is one of the most celebrated directors in Hollywood history, particularly in the film noir genre. While Bogdanovich was relatively new to the scene when The Godfather was in development, Preminger had been a renowned filmmaker for decades. After emigrating to the US in the mid-1930s, Preminger first earned widespread acclaim for his iconic 1944 noir Laura. If he'd actually taken an interest in the project, Preminger would have been a great choice for The Godfather. He was notorious for tackling taboo subject matter in mainstream movies under the strict regulations of the Hays Code. He depicted drug addiction in 1955's The Man with the Golden Arm, sexual assault in 1959's Anatomy of a Murder, and homosexuality in 1962's Advise and Consent. It would have been interesting to see what he'd do with the grim subject matter and uncompromising plot twists of The Godfather.